Hi, I'm Donia Story, and today I'm here at GovWin with Deltek, and we're talking about the various questions that a small or even a large company should be asking if you're even thinking about entering into the federal sector. And so I have with me today at with our roundtable Guy, Greg, Stephanie, and Angela. And we're going to be talking about those things you should be considering. Now, Guy, if you would, please tell us, first of all, who you are, who you're with, and a little bit as to why you would, what kind of information you might be sharing with us today.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Guy Timberlake, and I'm the co-founder and chief visionary officer of the American Small Business Coalition. We're a membership organization formed in 2004 to provide support to companies, primarily small businesses, who are looking to do work or expand their work in the government sector. The resources we provide range from educational training, market intelligence, and just resources to develop relationships and information that'll help companies acquire the information to make decisions about pursuing opportunities or closing business with other teammates as well. And one of the reasons we do what we do is when I worked for small businesses for so many years in the federal sector, the resources that are available to companies today didn't exist back then. And so we wanted to put something out that was meaningful and functional to help companies really take advantage of the opportunities that exist in government contracting.
Great. That's an excellent point, because I know in growing my company it was all about teaming and how we would link up with other people. Now, Stephanie, you are here from Deltek, our host for the day. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Great. So my name is Stephanie Bailey. I'm Director of Product Marketing in our Product Strategy and Management organization. My sole focus at Deltek is working with small and mid-sized government contractors to really understand their pain points and the value that we can help deliver in an end-to-end project lifecycle solution that really allows them to leverage our solutions for success and gives them the competitive edge in a very competitive marketplace.
That's great. Now, Angela, you're from one of my favorite agencies. I mentioned that to you before we went on air. I know you're with Department of Commerce, and I have to tell you, you guys were very significant in helping to grow my company. Tell us about what you do.
Sure. I'm Angela Washington. I am a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency. I'm a senior business development specialist there, and what that means is I am one of the key folks to focus on how we assist minority firms accessing new markets, accessing capital resources, how to even pursue federal government contracting. More recently, the agency has transitioned into a very globally focused organization. And one of the things I'd like to mention, in pursuing federal government contracts, there is an opportunity for firms to leverage the domestic marketplace to prove their product, to acquire past performance, to grow of size and scale so that they're able to export to new markets. So we're really excited about tying the domestic opportunity platform into the global platform so that we can create global businesses, not just domestic, by leveraging federal government contracts, opportunities, and resources. So we're really excited about doing that. We have a network of 40 business centers throughout the United States. We also have a federal procurement center here in the Washington, D.C. area, where they're focused on providing those capital opportunities and contract opportunities. So we're really excited about that.
Wow, that is exciting. I know, the all-American dream is to grow up and have your own business, but boy, to be able to have that business and have it go global, I think is just an incredible dream, and it sounds like it's so doable. I've been in business now for, I take a breath, 32 years, and the last 20 of those years have been in the federal space. And I'm kind of, on the almost retirement side right now. But I remember 20 years ago when someone first said to me, Donia, why don't you do business with the federal government? I can remember that I felt like when I just went out to inquire as to whether I could do this, it was like being dropped on another planet. A different language, different regulations. It was just a whole new world. But it was amazing after I kind of got the hang of it. It was just a tremendous opportunity. And I would think, Guy, you probably run into a lot of companies that come to you and say, well, do you think I have a shot? I mean, how do you point them in the right direction of doing market research to see if the government even buys what they sell?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is the biggest problem and the biggest benefit all wrapped up in one is that the government buys everything. So there's never a shortage of, do they buy this? Yeah, they definitely buy it. The trick is to figure out who buys it, how they buy it, where they buy it, those type of things. And so more than anything else, we emphasize market research, leveraging information that's readily available out there, whether you're doing it on your own, using one of the great services like those offered by GovWin, so that you can consume this information, understand what the information means to you in the context of working with a specific government agency, and then very specifically apply that to leverage a strategy to go do business with it.
Now, I'm a graduate of the 8A program, and I can remember early on there were folks that would say, Donia, you have this thing called the 8A certification. Just go out, and if the customer wants something, just sell them anything. And I kept, I came from a marketing background where the focus should always be very targeted and that sort of thing. Do you find that 8As are sometimes tempted to go out and just try to say yes to everything?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of companies are, and I think they do that really as a knee-jerk. They want to please the customer or please the potential customer, so they want to be there to do anything they want. And the real trick to this is to get yourself in the door with an opportunity that proves your mettle to those customers. And then once you're in the door, it's really easy then, because they'll give you the opportunity to expand the breadth and depth of what you do, as it relates, kind of dovetails off of those original products or services. So.
Right. Now, Greg, I know, I think I heard you talk a little bit about competitive analysis and those sorts of things. So I guess for me, I always thought that I should start where I was the strongest. I mean, if you have a small company that you meet at a business fair and they were to pose this question to you as to, how would I position my company? What are some of the key points you could tell them about how to find out about the competition, as an example?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the first thing, of course, to know is that everybody has competition. Even if you think you're the only one who sells that particular breed of service, or you've got a methodology, proprietary, copyright, whatever it is, it isn't. Certainly, around here we call them the Beltway Bandits, the big companies that sell just about everything and anything to the federal government. That's great. That makes them in many cases very profitable and able to grow very quickly and do a lot of acquisitions. At least in years past. But in any case, the reality is that there's a point where they can't do it, or they won't do it. I worked for a large company, one of those Beltway Bandits, and I can tell you that there were things that were just simply pushed to the side. And I think the reality is that what small companies need to do is to have some sort of a competitive intelligence apparatus. Now, people think that sometimes that means you got to bring someone in who just came from the CIA or whatever and do that work. That's absolutely not true. What it is just a function. Talking off air earlier, I was saying one of the points I made is that there doesn't even have to be a dedicated staff to do competitive analysis. What we need to be able to do is have it done, and that is to say that if you've got 5 salespeople, they all need to be looking at a couple of different competitors, a couple of different segments of the market, and understand some of those competitive dynamics. What are they winning? Why are they winning it? Are they winning it on price? Are they winning on on technical approach? Is it just simply that they're cozy with the agency and they seem to keep winning every single task order that rolls off GSA or the OPM vehicle they're on or whatever it may be? But I think keeping an eye on that and looking for the trends and other things too, like looking for their key hires. Why why are they hiring someone new? What's that person or people supposed to bring to them? And and keeping an eye further and further out. I know that in my role I'm basically told that I'm supposed to be looking 18 plus months out in developing the market. So that I'm not selling. I'm not going out and trying to win task orders, writing proposals. I contribute to that and I help with those things, but what I really am doing is looking a lot further down the road, and especially with the competitive analysis, that's essential because what matters today may not matter in a year or 2 years from now. So again, keeping an eye, a broad eye open is very critical.
Well, looking down the road and hold that thought, Guy, it's amazing. I listen to what you're saying and I'm thinking, gee, I hope everybody is writing so quickly. It's just so many different things, but it really is, I guess the takeaway here is it's a lot to think about. And, I've often said I'm a very simple person and thinker. And when someone asked me, Donia, when you got started, what were the key questions that you had to answer? And I said, when I look back, the 2 questions that I knew I always had to answer was, what have you done and who did you do it for? I mean, really, we call it past performance today, but when I think back, and even in the commercial marketplace, because for many years I had an office in Manhattan, people still wanted to know, what did you do and who did you do that for? Stephanie, when you're working here at Deltek and you're meeting other small companies and you're taking a look at the array of products that you have to offer, what are some of the things that you recommend to companies as they're trying to position themselves out there?
Absolutely. So it's interesting you brought up the past performance comments. Earlier this year, I attended an 8-day conference down in Florida, and that's one of the things that the P-TECH office really talked about was your past performance is everything. So as you're setting yourself up to work with the federal government, it's really important that even when you're getting ready to start marketing to win that first award, you really look at what staffing and what systems you have in place and how those will support the contract that you're going to win. Because a lot of times when I meet with customers, they wait until they win that award to make that assessment, and it's too late. And if you're hit with an SF 1408 pre-award audit and you haven't had that discussion or looked internally about what support you're going to have, or even talk to your teaming partner about what process or operational system you're going to have, you're not going to be successful, and that's not going to give you the competitive edge and the ability to win in the future.
I call that the good news, bad news. The
Exactly.
good news is we've won a contract.
Right.
The bad news is, oh my gosh,
Now what?
we've won
Right.
a contract. And it goes back to a lot of what you were saying, Greg, that kind of looking down the road, and there's a lot to look at and plan for. And it is amazing that so many small companies find themselves in the sales mode and not so much in the
Absolutely.
planning mode. And obviously that's where Deltek can help. Now, I'm very interested. What are some of the key items that, or key points that you oftentimes recommend to small companies that you meet as part of your procurement fairs and outreach that you're doing? Are there one or two key things that you always pass on to them that you think are important?
There are a couple things, but I think the most relevant is core capabilities. Truly know your core capabilities, know what your capacity is as a company, understand what resources you need to actually execute on any given contract or opportunity that you're presented with. And so what I really have just based it as, I've coined it as knowing your niche market. Understanding that there are lots of products and services, there's lots of competitors, there's lots of methodologies in terms of pursuing the federal government. But first, be sure that you have coined yourself almost as the expert in your particular market. I agree with Guy that there will be plenty of opportunities to expand, to partner, to reach beyond your core capability. But I think it's important that when a contracting officer looks at a small business, especially being new to market, that they look at this firm as able and capable of doing this particular service. The government buys for the purpose of procuring a good product, a good service for a good price. And also we have a new social responsibility to help our small businesses grow. We've heard the president say a number of times that small businesses are the engine to our economy. And I think it's becoming more and more true and relevant every day. So if that is the case, then we have to be prepared as small businesses to stand in and fill in those opportunity gaps with great products and services and focused on what it is that we do best.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to a point that Guy made a little bit earlier. It makes me think of a talk that I gave in Boston a few years ago. You talked about the government buys everything, and I play this little game with my audience sometimes called Stump the Stories. And I always challenge them. So far, I've never had anyone that was offering something the government didn't buy, except for one lady who raised her hand, and I said, okay, what do you sell? And she said, organic cotton socks. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've just been stumped. And sure enough, in real time, I was able to pull up right there live. There were 4 acquisitions live at the moment on the computer in FedBizOps for organic cotton socks. So you just never know. But you had a thought that you wanted to share just a moment ago, and I want to come back to that.
Absolutely, and the point of competition has actually come up a couple of times, and I wanted to bring up one aspect of this that I learned years ago before government contracting, and has become more and more apparent, in government contracting. That competition is not always about another company. In some instances, your competition is status quo, and it's literally the government can just stay where they are. and not make a change. And that's one of the big things, is trying to help them understand, if you've got an innovative product or an innovative process that can help them do something more efficiently, which is one of the big buzzwords right now, performance management and efficiency. If you can help them do that, it's incumbent on you to help them understand that, or else you're going to be a victim of status quo.
Right. Well, amazing. That key point was exactly how I was able to grow my company 20 years ago. Exactly. It wasn't anything that was high tech. It was very low tech as far as product, but we discovered a way to be able to sell and execute the contracts and the projects in a different way, and that's all it was. It was just a different way of managing the projects. And as you said a little bit earlier, we became seen as an expert, or we were positioned as the go-to company. Now, a point of curiosity, and again, I think this point is actually relevant whether you're a small, mid-sized, or large company. I know right now I'm talking to a publicly traded firm that is looking to create for the first time a federal division. Does anybody have any input? Is there a certain time for a small or mid-sized company to consider entering the federal sector? I will tell you, I see a lot of people starting businesses right now. They're a new business, and the first thing they want to do is do business with the federal government. Do I have any comments on what I mean, I know what my thoughts are, but I'd love to hear what you all are thinking about it.
I've seen it happen in odd forms. I'm working for kind of one of the big consulting firms not that long ago. One of our competitors that everybody knows, that a strategy consulting firm started to enter the federal marketplace, and I thought, well, this is kind of odd. They're sort of this this high profile big name brand, and they're entering the federal market. But the truth of the matter is, there were a lot of things that they could do. Now, obviously, they haven't made this their the biggest division of their company. This hasn't created some massive growth for them. But what they did do is something very simple, and I think it's I defer to someone like Guy for the guidance on how to do this. But I would say that you get yourself the manual as it is on how to get on the GSA schedule and start there. If nothing else, it gives you an understanding of the landscape, what again the government's buying within your chosen thing. GSA Schedule 70 for IT services, for an example, and you say, what can I provide in there, and then just to start to look at some of those opportunities. Because the truth of the matter is, you can be on a GSA schedule and decide not to use it, or you can try to bid on everything and not win anything. I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios that can play out, but I think that it helps to sort of build that understanding. And and I'm not trying to say you have to go through some incredible undertaking as far as hiring someone to do this, but I think just simply doing some bits and pieces of research, especially with a large company, as you say, Donia.
Well, it is amazing, yeah.
The research part is the key, though, and one of the things that we do with companies, and I've seen it happen time and time again, more times than I care to think. A company that comes in that has gone out, got an 8A certified, got a GSA schedule, been in business, under this, auspice for 2 or 3 years, haven't lost their schedule yet because they weren't doing business, and they make the decision to go after government contracts. It's kind of like, where were you and what were you thinking when you did this initially? And a lot of times it's really research-based. Before you stick your big toe in the water, have that lay of the land. Understand how the agencies buy, what they buy. If you are trying to go sell IT services to the U.S. Navy and you're going to get a GSA schedule, we're going to probably tell you to hold on a second because they really don't do it that way anymore. Or if you're trying to get construction on there, that's one of the few things that's not on a GSA schedule. So it's having that context more than anything else. But I think, as important as the time is really going to be the attitude coming into the marketplace. A friend of mine, Mark Amtower, talks about the glitz and glamour of the federal sector, and it's the billions of dollars that we spend all the time. And folks see this, and that's where they want to be.
Yeah.
The mistake a lot of companies make coming in is that they're immediately swinging for the fence. They want to be attached to that billion-dollar procurement first time out. And what's really important from a research standpoint is, how does the government buy? Are there other opportunities that are lower risk that would give them a chance to get to know you and vice versa to get you in the door?
Well, you've just said something, and I want to bounce over to Stephanie based on something you said. I know many times when I'm out speaking, I have people that will come up and they'll say, Donia, maybe you could help me go after this contract. And I start asking them questions. And one of the questions would be, what is the largest contract that you've ever managed? Let's say it was $50,000. My next question is, what is the size of the procurement you would like to go after and try to land? $10 million. Well, I immediately start thinking, number one, can you finance this?
Right.
And of course, I begin looking at all the business processes. I mean, talk a little bit about that. We, just a few moments ago, talked about that post-award good news, bad news story.
Yep.
But what are some of the things that you could pass along, that kind of incremental steps they need to start thinking about?
Sure. So I think I started talking about this a few minutes ago, but understanding if you have the right people in the right positions, I think is really important, and really understanding, what systems you have in place, and then what operational procedures you have in place. So
Now, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot because I was thinking back in my past history, but when you talk about some of these operational processes and whatever, is there one or two? I'm sitting here thinking to myself, proposal management or contract management. Are there processes or things they should plan for in any particular order that would be helpful?
I think proposal management, contract management, being able to have resource management are all very important. It really depends on the contract type that you're going after. But I think having those in place and then having the right partners in place are really key to their success.
Now, partners, I always think of teaming, all right, when you say partners to me. And I have to say, one of the most significant things that helped to grow my company was we had I remember the number, 462 teaming partners that were small businesses nationwide. And we always tried to kind of walk the talk of being a small company, woman-owned, minority, and we went looking for partners that kind of looked like us, so to speak. Do you have any helpful hints on how do you go out and find the right teaming partners? And I know it took us a while to get to that number, but they helped us perform quickly and allowed us to do a lot of things in hundreds of cities all at the same time. So what are some of the helpful hints that you would pass on, Angela?
That's a very good question, and I really like to answer that question. Working with minority firms aren't always small or medium, large. They cover a large spectrum, large and small. And on one hand, I have small businesses that come in and they say, I have a really good product, I just really need some capacity to prove that I can do this in the market. And then on the other spectrum, I have large firms that come in and say, look, I've mastered this space, I need new opportunities, and I'm looking for smaller businesses that I can team with so that I can leverage their set aside to whatever their competitive advantage is so that they can win together. So it's really looking at how do you get a win-win scenario. So as a small business, teaming with what larger company gives me a win-win scenario. If my product is ironclad and my capabilities are where they need to be, is it bonding that I need? Is it a staffing assistant? Is it proposal management, contract management, resource management? What is it that I need? And finding a strong partner who possess those things.
So I guess it's like putting together a wish list of what you need, and the wish list could change from procurement or opportunity to opportunity.
It really can.
One of the things, and I know we've all probably sitting around this table have heard the typical horror stories about teaming, subbing, priming, which direction do you go in? And I have to tell you, I was very biased as a small business to try to prime as much work as I possibly could. Granted, I knew I had to get those business processes in place and I had to master those. But I always encourage small companies to try to prime as much as possible. Caveat here, when it makes good sense, because there are times, I remember one job, I won't say the name of the agency, but it was a $100 million procurement, which we did win. But they refused to actually put that out as a small business competition or would not award it because it had a $100,000 a day liquidated damages penalty. And when we took a look at that, we thought, ooh, maybe we don't want this. And so we kind of flipped the arrangement because we were going to prime it. And we went to our big partner and we all agreed, well, of course, now you'd need to prime that. But we did that because it was a partner we had worked with many, many times, and we had a solid relationship. Guy, you're in the middle of working with a lot of small companies. What sort of guidance do you give companies that ask for that sort of advice of you?
And it's very interesting. I was actually working with the predecessor to GovWin Input years ago when they had done a study on why companies partner, and it was really targeted at the time to why large companies, large prime contractors would work with smaller companies and vice versa. And it really came down to just a couple points. There was something that this other company brought to the table that was not necessarily inherent or native to their organization. Maybe it was a relationship, a key capability, a product. The socioeconomic piece was always lagging. That wasn't one of the primary reasons a large company would look at a small business.
Right.
But it really came down to what is it that you bring to the table that can help us either close the deal or deliver more efficiently or at a savings.
If I can jump in again, I always, because I am a small business owner, I have a moment of deja vu with everything that all of you bring up. But I can remember our most successful relationship that lasted many, many years was based on the principle that you just provided. It was a major manufacturer, and we had sought them out because they were ranked as #1 in their industry. And the lesson learned for me that I try to pass on to others is that I did not do what they did. We were dependent upon each other, and we complemented each other in that relationship, and we got to know and almost anticipate. It's kind of like a brother and a sister. You grow up with them and you kind of get to anticipate what they're going to say, what they're going to do. And that working relationship worked out really well. I mean, for mine, and I will say that it doesn't always work out well. I mean, Angela, have you had some situations with small companies where things did not work well? Not that we want to know names or situations, but what are some of the things small companies need to be aware of to avoid or watch out for in teaming?
Well, I would say it's just like any agreement. Understanding what's in the arrangement, who's doing what share of the business, who's responsible for, I would just say clearly understanding how the arrangement is going to be set up and how it's going to be executed. And I think those are the most essential parts of a teaming arrangement. We find that teaming arrangements are written very loosely sometimes.
Yes.
And I think the more that you structure them as you would a formal contract, the same way that the government would hold you to that standard, that's almost how you want to set up the teaming arrangement to avoid those pitfalls.
That is a perfect example. I mean, one of the things that I try to do when I'm teaching around the country is present to people that when they put together that teaming arrangement, as an exhibit to that teaming arrangement should be an example of the, let's say you're a subcontractor if you're a small company, actually an example of the subcontract agreement that includes important information such as costing, type of work, percentage of work, have an exit strategy. So many people are so interested in how to tie the work down, they forget. Suppose that something comes up. I know I have a lesson learned myself where I forgot to put in one thing, and that was about change orders. And I kind of got stuck in a particular situation with a prime that we chose not to work with again based on change orders and how they managed that with us. That was a learning example for me, so that's a great point. Before we close out, there is a point that I want to go over, and we never want to assume that everyone in our audience knows about the terms 8A, and we talked about certifications and that sort of thing. Guy, if you would take a moment and if you do just a real quick overview as to the key certifications that are out there and why they might be valuable to a small company. Why I would say they would or would not be valuable to a small company.
I'm just going to defer this one to Angela.
Okay, all right.
And what I'll say though
Angela,
is,
I will want you to jump in on that too.
There really are right now, ever since the SDB program was taken out of circulation from the standpoint of being a formal certification, the only programs that the government manages for federal contracting that require formal certification are the 8A program, which is the 8A Business Development Program managed by SBA, the Hub Zone or Historically Underutilized Business Zone program, which again is certified and managed by the SBA, the Veterans Program, which currently is only certification is only required to work with the VA, under that, and that is under the Center for Veterans Enterprise. And then the women's program, the A&M program, that is a certification program also managed by SBA, but they've also certified a number of third-party organizations to provide for those as well. So outside of those, you can be a small business. That's a self-certifying designation, as is small disadvantaged business. And then all the other ones that are certified but not by the government are some of the tribal organizations that provide for those, whichever tribal organization, Alaskan, Native, Hawaiian Islander, Native American, or others.
Right, right. I know some of those third-party certifiers. I know my company's been certified by the NMSDC and WeBank for a number of years, and we have found them to be extremely valuable. I didn't know, of course, that in the 8M program, the Woman-Owned program, that my WeBank certification would serve me well. But they've been great. Now, I'm always interested from the government's point of view, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of a misunderstanding out in the marketplace with small businesses. Just because you have a certification, what does that really guarantee you, Angela?
Nothing.
Keyword, guarantee.
If I can just be frank and be honest, it's nothing. I think it goes back to the essentials. One of the things that I talk to small businesses about, and it wasn't necessarily a part of the conversation today, is events. The federal government has the OSDBU program, which is the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization Program. These offices, there are about 24 of them. These offices are designed to ensure that each federal agency designates and spend at least 23% of their budget with small businesses that fall into these categories. Now, those folks are very, very motivated to make those goals. So you have a number of events that take place not just in the Washington, D.C. area, but throughout the country. And the primary goal of those events is to really educate small businesses, medium business, large businesses on what opportunities are there and how to do a number of things that I say the check the box things. And I'll be specific, and it's a minor plug. We have an event every year called MedWeek. It's the Minority Enterprise Development Week Conference, and it's December 6th here in Washington, D.C. at the Wardman Marriott. But essentially, we've designated 8 very specific federal agencies, USAID, State, Commerce, Transportation, Homeland, and a bunch of others. We used to put them together in a matchmaker and have them sit face-to-face with one business at a time and just talk about doing business with the agency. Well, we got feedback, and the businesses say, 15 minutes? That's nothing. So what we've done this year, and we found this to be very, very helpful, is we've asked those federal agencies to come in, do a 1-hour panel. Bring your OSDBU director, your small business specialist, a contracting officer, and one of your primes. Why did we ask them to do that? Because that really is the whole gamut of that small business life cycle in terms of new to market.
I like that.
You start with a small business specialist who can talk to you about their agency, and we've asked them to take care of a number of things. And we do this not just at MedWeek, but we do this all year long. We ask them to come in, help small businesses understand your mission, help them understand what you buy, where you buy it, how do I find your forecast, how do I analyze it, what does your RFP, RFI, sources sort process look like?
I love that.
And really, and then at the end of the day, how do I work with your primes? And so I think once you start to ask yourself those questions and where do you find the resources to get that done, that is an essential way to gather the information and intelligence that you need to really start pursuing the federal marketplace.
You know what I love about that is you have offered up the scenario that we've been talking about. Do you want to sub? This is the way you do it. Do you want to prime? These are some of the educational areas that you need to get into. I mean, that is really, really great. Well, I know that we've been having a great conversation here today, and we've been sharing a lot of good information, and I hope people have been taking great notes. I'd love to be able to have everyone go around the table and make a couple of closing comments. If there was one super takeaway that you'd want to provide to anyone out in the audience? And think in terms of, are you a large company looking to team with a small business, or are you a small business that just wants to, as you said, kind of stick your toe in the water and test to see if it's right for you? What's the one super takeaway that you'd like to leave them with, Guy?
I think the biggest thing for anyone out there listening really is to focus in on having a plan and utilizing the information that's available to you to understand really where to allocate resources, what events you're going to go to, understand how those events are related to your approach, the agencies you want to work with, the goods and services you offer, and also the companies that you want to partner with, whether large or small, and just use resources through organizations like the Technical Assistance Centers, the Small Business Development Centers. The MBDA has the Minority Business Development Centers. Organizations like GovWin and others offer a lot of programs that are market intelligence based to help you really get an understanding of really how to position yourself.
Great. Greg?
Right. I think one of the things is really just to keep an eye up over the horizon. I know I mentioned earlier about looking at competitors and where they might go and all that, but I think it really comes down to something general. And I might even make it something as simple as just take 6 or 7 bullet points, put them on a piece of paper, and just kind of pin them up on your board, so to speak. Just what do you want? What are you keeping an eye out for, and why? And if it's to grow, to become a bigger company, to graduate from the 8A program, to get acquired before you leave the 8A program, whatever your goals are, just what are they? What should you keep an eye out for? Because then when you see all those emails that come in about events and free events and paid events, whatever, or just any sort of educational opportunity, you know that you might want to take advantage of them to be able to fill in some of those gaps that you have in your intelligence gathering process, which again doesn't have to be anything formal, just simply again keeping an eye out there in as broad a way as possible and making that something that as many of your staff who work in business development do, and it doesn't have to be a dedicated person, just simply an action to do it.
Great.
And I would actually just add on to what Guy said. So your plan needs to include once you win that award, because that's really important. Winning that award is just step one. You really need to set yourself up for success, because once you win that award, you have the back-end processes in place. But then you're also going after that next award. So your plan needs to include what you're going to do and that good news, bad news you talked about, but really enabling yourself for success, and winning that first bid allows you to win the second, the third, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And I'll just say that I would like to echo the refining your capabilities, understanding your product, your service, how you plan to present that to the federal government, how you're prepared to deal with the compliance regulations that comes with winning an award, and really making sure that you know how to make yourself the go-to person to any contracting officer, program specialist, small business office throughout the government. How do I coin myself as the go-to person in my core capability?
These have been excellent comments, and I know that we could have gone on for hours and hours. I think of all the stories that I could have been telling from my own experience. But thank you so much for joining me today. And again, I'm Donia Story with GovTips.biz, and we have been putting on this panel sponsored by GovWin, part of the Deltek network, and we thank you so much for joining us.